It begins. Woo! We started.
Yeah.
All right.
It's actually kind of a good time to start because we're on episode 20 and we just got our third guest, I believe, ever.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. We got to do one like every 10 episodes, maybe more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Welcome, Ryan, for episode 20.
Yeah, dude. Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Should we introduce Ryan?
You?
Yeah.
Glad to join Captain Brandon and the Mighty Mouse.
That's right.
Do I have to have a nickname as well?
No.
I don't know. We just are not that serious and we make up weird names.
It's become kind of a mini game.
Honestly, the Mighty Mouse thing is kind of giving me this like Prince Caspian from Narnia vibes right now. Yeah, some Reepicheep. That's the name I was looking for.
Nice.
Seems appropriate. You were just mentioning how you had drawn inspiration from Tolkien maps, maybe also other fantasy genres.
Yeah, and well, I know that's a huge rabbit hole, but yes, I know I am constantly inspired by not only Tolkien but also maps, both of which I can spend endless hours staring at or reading.
We have to cut Brandon off at a certain point.
Yeah, so. cut me off right there. Too much.
He's reached his quota for the month.
He's had too much Tolkien. Cut him off.
Yeah. Ryan, do you want us to introduce you a little bit or anything, or do you want to introduce yourself?
I mean, I'll take a moment to introduce myself, but I think you guys know me quite well. It's been, 15 years or more for having known you. Brandon going on more like 20. And at this point, I don't know if I have much to introduce beyond I'm a lover of fantasy and sci-fi books. I love board games from the whimsical to the very strategic. I like delicious food and playing soccer and spike ball.
And he's an all-around good guy. I'll just throw
a bunch of things that we like to do. One of which is talking to my friends on a podcast.
There you go. Yeah,
that's right.
This is just instead of like calling people on the phone anymore, we just do a podcast, and that's how we catch up. So
yeah, pretty much. It's it's like you talk about interesting things on the phone anyway. So why not just record it and make millions of dollars off of it?
What was your cut, Ryan?
Yeah,
we can talk about that after.
I think I get 0%.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently, we're also getting 0%.
A lot of zero going around.
There's a lot of zero going around.
All right, Brandon. Why don't you get us started? Because I'm not sure how to phrase mine. So.
Okay. Oh, you don't know how to phrase it? Okay. Well, all right. So the thing that inspired me this week and this past weekend is something that I was doing, and that is playing board games. I am very thankful that my wife loves playing board games because it gives me the opportunity to play a lot of board games with her. And actually, she is a greater lover of board games than I am. But I know it was kind of surprising. But, I've played, and I wouldn't even say just board games, like board games, card games, tabletop games, just something where
like
you are
games.
Like a physical in-person game that's not like an athletic sport, right? It's like you are sitting at a table and you're maneuvering pieces or cards or dice or something, and you're sitting across from a person or a group of people. And I think it's inspiring how a couple things about it. I think one, it's inspiring how easy it is to just pull out a box and you can have hours of fun doing something, and you can learn things, and it's a great icebreaker. You can meet new people. And I think the other thing is it's interesting how the board game community, I feel like, has really had this uprising in the past several years. I feel like for a long time it was like chess, and then we got into like Monopoly. And then, I don't know, in the past, maybe 10 plus years or something like that, it just feels like all these board game companies have come out. There's all these board game developers, and people are just inspired to like create their own things. And you have so many great games that are coming out. And it used to be that like everybody kind of had the same few things. And now there's so many board games out there. I can't even like categorize all of them. I'm not even on top of them all. It's like constantly new ones coming out. And I actually earlier today, I spent maybe like an hour going through a website called boardgamegeek.com. I think that's what it was called. It's like the, rating review website for board games and whatnot.
Like an IMBD.
I know that one well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just was blown away by like dude, there's all these great games on here, the trending games, the new games, the things that have the top reviews, whatever that I was looking at. And it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't even heard of half of these things, let alone played them. And it just kind of inspired me by how much creativity and inventiveness people have created, and how much creativity they've created. And I thought it was really cool to think also of just the potential for play and connection. And I think that's one of the things I really love about board games. You know, if you have a group of friends, there's tons of stuff you can do together. You know, you go play sports together, you can go watch a movie together, you can whatever it is. But I think that it is really fun when you can sit around a table, there's communication, you can meet somebody new you didn't know, you can learn something. I really find board games such a fascinating social exercise. And I think it's also interesting when you think of the different genres of board games.
Yeah.
I think about how the three of us have played poker over the years. You know, poker is really interesting. It's not for everybody. And there's maybe some money involved if you play it that way with some gambling. Or you can get into the poker where it's just about fun, or it's just about like people trying. Say it again.
Fun. What's that?
Yeah, fun. Yeah, maybe poker's
explain
not
that to me.
Like, I think that there's people who want to play games just for the sake of having fun, and then there's people who want to play a game because they like a challenge, or they like being serious or strategic. And I feel like poker is one of those things where it's not necessarily about fun. That was what I was trying to say. It's more about like, let me get this money, or I'm trying to like read the room, or it's almost like this weird challenge. And I feel like when I approach poker, I have fun, but fun like almost isn't the goal, you know, which is interesting.
Secondary consequence.
Yeah, it's kind of like a secondary thing. And I think actually my primary goal whenever I play poker is I love the connection I get with other people, which is so weird because I think when I play, I'm really quiet. I'm not really like, hey, how's it going, man? What do you do for work? La la, tell me about your family. I'm more just like beady eye staring at somebody across the room being like, who is that man? Like, I will read your soul. Do you have two aces? You know, it's like you're really just trying to like psychoanalyze the other person. But I think that that's how you kind of connect with that person, is you're like basically trying to mind read them, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's like that.
They're trying to block you out. You're trying to get in.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
like a mental monster movie.
Yeah. It's
at the door.
So Brandon, you bring up board games as something that inspires you. I think of inspiration as it's an arrow, right? It takes us in a direction. So what are you inspired to? Are you inspired to connect with people? Is that what you're saying? Is it inspiring you to create something that wasn't there before? What is that inspiration? You've identified the source. Now, what does it create in your life?
Well, and so that's interesting because the different types of board games you play could create different things, right? Like poker, in that example, that's something that, in my case, usually does not create more wealth, but hopefully it creates more friendships, right? There's other games where I think, there's other games where I think that it actually creates different skills. You know, there's the classic, Scrabble. You learn how words, spelling, and different things like that. Then I think the game that actually kind of inspired this topic for me was this weekend I was playing Captain Sonar for like 4 hours with friends. Excellent and game. It was so fun. It's live action decision making, but I realized there was another part of Captain Sonar that I really liked. Not only is it live action strategy in the moment, making these like snap decisions, I realized how imaginative and immersive it was, and it just brought you into this whole other world, and you like forget where you are, and you are in the submarine. And I think that immersion is really fun because it like trains my imagination, which I really like about that game. And I think it also trains your teamwork because you've got a bunch of people to your right and left that you're basically communicating with, and there's all these weird sort of subtleties that you have to pick up with other people's. And you kind of learn different people's strengths and weaknesses. Or is this a detail-oriented person? Can they think big picture? It's really interesting. So yeah, back to your question, Ryan, I think that in poker, there's a strength to that inspires me of what do I gain from that, which would be like human connection, versus other games, Captain Sonar. It would be maybe more like, how do I build my imagination and work as a team with other people, and I think that's really fun. Okay, so those were some of the board games that I was giving as examples, some of the things I was thinking about with board games, but I'd love to ask you guys a couple questions. My first one would just be, off the top of your head, what would you say is like your favorite board game at just currently at the moment? And it doesn't have to be boards, it could be cards or dice or something different.
Asking the hard questions right up front. Having trouble paring it down.
Go for it, Ryan. Unless you need a second to think.
Oh, I will need a second. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. For me, I think Flesh and Blood is my game of choice right now. Still is. Kind of taken a step back, but it's still my go-to game. I really just, kind of like you said, it kind of creates that level of connection, especially since it's in the name, like Flesh and Blood. It's like, that's how it's meant to be played. So it's kind of cool, like in this day and age, that people actively get together to kind of like engage face to face with something when it could easily just be a digital game. And so
I'm not familiar with this game at all, Paul. Would you take a moment to fill me in?
Yeah, it's basically just like, not more or less Magic the Gathering. It's a trading card game. And so it just kind of, instead of though, like most of those games, you kind of build up and you play lands to be able to play stuff, or you kind of build up your board. In this game, you kind of start out as a hero, and then you're battling each other down and kind of like wearing each other out, like getting rid of their armor and, basically trying to just kill your opponent. So
got it.
Yeah, but I really like, they've kind of, the people that make the game have kind of taken a really heavy stance on the competitive side of things, and so they kind of foster that good sportsmanship and good, like they partner with a lot of local stores too to like run the game. So they basically host sponsored events every week you can go to, and I stopped playing just because of, it's like an hour drive to my local store or whatever. But my buddy sponsored me he paid for my gas to come out the other day, so I went and actually won the event, which was cool.
Dude, that's nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks. I gave him all the pricing, so it worked out.
That's cool that like through playing that game, it created a connection for you where he was like paying money for you to be there because he wanted to keep the connection going, Yeah. He wanted to have you there. That's pretty cool, man.
That's a kind of inspiration, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've made really good friends through that game, and he was one of the guys I went down to California with actually to play in a big tournament. So it's like, I didn't expect to get like good friends out of it going into playing that game, or kind of forging these connections outside of the game. But through that, I was able to like meet some actually really good friends. So yeah, that's my game.
That's cool. How about you, Ryan? Anything that comes to mind?
Oh, many, many games come to mind. Most recently this weekend, we were playing Cards Against Humanity. I wouldn't call that a favorite game, but it
is inspiring.
Led to some great bonding among the guys that I was with. I don't know if the inspiration is anywhere related to the content of the game. I think it's much more related to the mutual joy that we all take in humor, and finding humor in sometimes really dark things, sometimes really inappropriate things.
You're not just sitting there reading the cards by yourself in the evening.
Yeah, by playing Cards Against Humanity, what he really meant was reading it alone in my room.
yeah, right? And, finding shared humanity in these things that are potentially antithetical to what we would value most of the time. And I think kind of on the other side of things, that's very much a parlor game. Most recently, I was playing a game called The Crew, Underwater, something like that, which has a cooperative card playing. It's a trick-taking game that requires you to play cards like you would in Hearts or other similar games, except that the goal of the game is that you're given objectives to complete as a team, each player, I have to take a trick with a heart in it. I have to take no tricks with a spade in it. I have to take only 3 tricks across the game, whatever it is. So you have to coordinate who plays what card to win the hand, except you're not allowed to talk. The theme is that you are divers underwater.
Oh,
and the only
clever.
way that you're able to communicate is once you can play one card down to indicate if it's your highest card, your lowest card, or your only card.
What about meaningful eye contact?
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Don't do that.
Dude, that's a clever game concept to like give people a little in-person handicap of not talking. That would be cool if you could only use like scuba signal or something like that.
That's what it ends up feeling like. And I played it with my brother and the bachelor from the weekend when we were there. And the most challenging part of it being that it would be a difficult game even if we were talking to one another. But there are implicit rules that are created when a certain player plays a card because there's a logic that you would infer behind it. Kind of like when you're reading someone in poker, as you brought up. So you're trying to know, okay, if they played the highest card that's potentially available, they believe that they're the best suited to lead in the next trick. Okay, how does that relate to what goals they have? Or, this person has the objective of completing 3 tricks in a row. So I'm assuming that they're going to try and keep the lead now for 2 more tricks. So I want to make sure I don't take it from them. And what do I have to play to ensure I don't steal that from them, right?
I'm probably unlike poker where they're trying to get you to not read them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, ooh, please read me.
And that creates a really interesting dynamic when certain players don't play the way you'd expect them to. Or they overlook something that you might have paid attention to, or vice versa. So trying to communicate with one another and identify based on your common goals without necessarily being able to know whether or not they caught what you were trying to do when you played that card.
That's when you find out everyone views like something like their priority or like their attention. Everyone's attention is like completely different, probably. It's like what people notice. Yeah.
And that... go ahead.
Oh, that kind of reminds me of what was that like Chinese fireworks game?
Hanabi. Yes,
Hanabi, yeah. It makes me think of that thing where you're like trying to say like a color or a number, and then the person's trying to like guess certain things of what's in your hand or something. And yeah.
Where you only have a certain number of clues, and you can indicate either what color or what number is in someone else's hand. You ever played this game, Paul?
No.
It's a card game where you're trying to play cards into a solitaire sequence, like 1 through 10 or whatever.
Okay.
The only problem is you can't see your own hand. You hold all of your cards facing the other players. And the key mechanic of the game is you consume a resource to tell someone about their cards.
Okay. Huh.
And
That's
so
kind of
that
cool.
leads to this very delicate balance of like, okay, I need to make sure this person doesn't play the card that will screw us over on this turn, but I also need to know enough about this person's turn so that when they take an action, I can act on it.
Yeah, they're just like trying to pick out the right card. Huh. Interesting. That's cool. Yeah, I was kind of like Indian poker as well, where you like hold the cards outwards
against your forehead.
Yeah. You gotta.
This reminds me of how Brandon just showed me the Tim Ferriss podcast and the guest Elon Lee. Perhaps you guys even discussed this on this podcast already.
Not yet.
Okay. I just remember that Elon Lee said that when it comes to creating games, his values are that the players are the source of entertainment rather than the game itself. And while there are some games that do the other, entertain people in other ways, the focus of the games he creates is that the people and understanding what the people will do next is the greatest source of engagement and fun. And I think both of the games that we just described, Hanabi and The Crew, do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
The tasks are very simple. The game doesn't add a lot of rules, but it requires you to interpret what other people are thinking, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say, anytime you throw human nature into a mix, it gets real complicated real fast.
Mm.
Huh. That's cool.
Well, yeah, there's my idea with the board games. And, for folks listening, if you have only ever played like the older classic board games, I encourage you to go to your local board game shop or look online. And there's crazy new board games for all levels of skills, guys, girls, strategy, party, all kinds of fun stuff. So check it out. Have
really
some
creative.
fun.
Just make your own game.
Make your own
And no,
game.
there are not affiliate links. We don't make money off of these recommendations.
You have $1 million idea to send it our way.
I've got affiliate links on my own thing. No, I'm just kidding. No affiliate links.
Yeah. Actually, when I was a kid, I used to make my own games with Legos, like board games.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd build like the board out of Lego and like draw
that.
my own cards and stuff, and have like little rule sets and stuff.
We once devised a battle chess, my brothers and I, where instead of normal chess pieces, we used Legos. And then as you'd advance and take pieces, you'd gain strength by taking over the other pieces.
This is my rook
building
bishop.
a bigger Lego warrior.
Yeah, that's cool. Huh. I like that too.
Yeah. I remember there was a time back when my wife and I were dating where we would play sequence all the time. And, it's like 2 cards, 2 full decks basically, and you're putting, chips down or whatever. And we just played it over and over and over again. And we finally got to the point where we were eventually bored with it. And I remember telling my wife, well, let's just change the game somehow. Well, let's just make up a new rule. How about instead of putting down a sequence of 5 chips, we do a sequence of 6 chips, or we have to do 3 sequences instead of 2 or something. She was like, we can't just change the game. And it was like, yeah, babe, we could just change the game whatever we want. And then we messed around with it, and she was okay with it and played with it. And I think it was kind of a new creativity, opening for her of like, oh yeah, let's just make the game however we want to be, And I think that is a fun aspect of a lot of card and board games.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, there is kind of like that top-down authority where it's like, it feels like it's somehow sacred and you can't mess with anything that someone's done or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a rule breaker, then someday you might be a rule writer. Break the rules of the games, and then one day you might write your own board game rules.
Make a Wikipedia quote list for you, dude. Put that on there.
Yeah, that's my quote of the day.
I'm gonna clip that and I'll put it in the description of the video.
Oh man,
get people really inspired. I guess I'll go next then.
Go for it, man. Yeah, you better take it away.
On that note,
go on to the next topic.
So I don't really have like a succinct way to put my thing. It's more of an idea or something, or concept. But what's inspiring to me is finishing things up. So like whether that be, kind of like a project you've been working on, or some sort of like chapter in your life, kind of like having the ending of that, and then like specifically when you do have an idea of like what you want to do next, like that transition period was really is exciting to me, because it's like I just get sick of working on something for so long, or in my case, that could be like a month and I'd be sick of it. But the ending process is like so draining for me, and like finishing and like fine tuning and tweaking everything. And so when I get to like start on a new project at the end of one, it's like I get like so much steam out of nowhere just to be like, okay, I'm just going to sit down for 8 hours, get this over with, and then I can like start working on my new idea that I really like. This is the idea that I'll really like and be, passionate about forever until a month later. So, yeah, I was kind of curious. Like, I was going to see if you guys experience anything similar, of like, what part of that process kind of stands out. It seems like both of you have kind of, done a lot of different things. So is there like a point? I'm guessing you've probably gone through that process, and maybe there's a part of it that stands out to you guys.
Yeah, Ryan, do you want to go ahead? Do you have any ideas initially?
So this kind of cycle of finishing one thing leading you into getting more into it, and then find yourself maybe even going down a bit of a rabbit hole until you're suddenly realizing, oh, I where am I now? Let's pick up something else. Do the same thing. You kind of not chase your tail, given that you're pursuing something, but kind of just fixate and find satisfaction in pursuing a certain path of thought until
Yeah.
something changes and you're no longer able to anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be external or even internal, just interest.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of it like when I get back into being active after a period of being sedentary, and the initial step into that becomes incredibly challenging. But then a week or two in, once you start to make a cycle of this, it just becomes easier and easier, and the momentum builds. I think of this in ways like reading a good book too, where you start something and then it becomes so much more exciting and more engaging that builds that momentum. Or perhaps developing a skill, right? When you first get into a skill and you get very excited about that thing or a new learning topic. I feel like, yeah, I see this pattern in my life in many different ways. And sometimes it's just the reality that I can't dedicate 6 hours in a day to learning something while also going and doing the work that I need to do.
Yeah, as much as you might want to.
And I think it's wonderful that we have the passion and the engagement to find something and like, oh, I'm going to run after this. And
so it's sounding
you
like
have an interested and curious mind to learn those things or whatever it is.
Yeah. So it sounds like the first part of that cycle is what really kind of grabs you, like picking up something
I'm
newer.
a lot worse at the finishing part.
Mm-hmm.
I start 10 different things and, I'll work on them separately until I just don't, the dopamine to keep going with it is no longer there.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, at least if you do 10 and you're only 10% successful, then one thing will work.
I have 10 very excellently started projects.
Nice.
I need someone like you to come in and give me more of the motivation to finish
Me?
those projects.
I don't have any motivation, dude. I actually, you can pay me to be your life coach, but outside of that, it's just going to be me sending you emails. Do it every day.
Do it now.
Sending you.
Or maybe on the other end of things, like when it comes to setting a list of things to do for the day and just the sheer motivation that comes from checking each one of those items off and that catapulting you to the next one.
Yeah, that does help a lot. But I've always kind of seen it like too is, you have, or at least this is how my life has gone. I think of it like maybe a disc, and you have almost like a string with like a pendulum on it, and then you like give it some momentum, and it's like swinging around the disc, and like on that disc, on like the most outer arc is like all your interest, or like the disc contains all your interest, or things that you like, and then basically as you get older, like it's similar to that like little that thread or whatever, like losing momentum, and so like it starts circling closer and closer to the center, and so like a lot of these external things that are interests might start falling off, and then like the way it goes in a circle, you actually like come back around in a lot of weird ways to things you were interested when you were younger or before, but just didn't like follow through with all the way. And so like you keep coming back around to everything just in different ways and at like a deeper level. And so, but then also like some of the stuff on the periphery starts to just, due to time or whatever it is, starts to fade away. And you're like, okay, like I'm not interested in being a doctor. It's like, because when you start out, you have like infinite potential, but then you kind of collapse that potential, and the things that like are really like core to you start to just cycle around back faster, I find. And like,
I had a conversation with my girlfriend about this because we were feeling that constraint, right? That over time your focus is paring down into fewer and fewer interests or fewer and fewer possibilities. And how do we approach that without a sense of loss? How do we see that as potentially exciting? And the realization that came from that is that interests, that experiences that we want to pursue are seasonal, and that we will have seasons of those things, and those seasons may return in ways that rhyme with the past. That kind of like the conversation that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And in that same way, the interests, the things that we thought we might pursue when we were younger, then return later in our lives in new fashions and new interpretations.
It's also interesting to think that, just on the idea of potential, which is, I feel like a total rabbit hole that I could definitely go down for a while, but it's interesting to think about the idea of potential. When you're younger, I feel like you just have, I don't know if I would say you have unlimited potential, or do you just have different potential from when you're older? Like when you're young, it's hard to go and immediately become professor at the university, like you kind of don't have a ton of potential to like do that when you're young. That's like an old people thing, but when you're young, you've got a lot more potential to become like a competitive athlete. And when you get older,
YouTuber,
you probably don't have a whole lot, unless you want to get into curling. I don't know, but I mean, you're probably not going to go get into whatever, I don't know, gymnastics and go to the Olympics when you get older. That's going to be a difficult thing. Yeah. The disadvantages increase, as you get older for that. But in terms of like, you're going to become a teacher of something, an author of something, the leader of a group, the storyteller of the family, the patriarch of the family, the matriarch of the family, it's like there's different positions in society that I think are easier to get into just purely because you're older. And people are like, well, you're an old guy. Like, why don't you be the leader of the thing, And so I feel like there are some different potentials. Just if you're old, it's one type of potential. If you're young, it's maybe another type of potential. But anyway, that's a little rabbit hole based off of what you were saying.
No, it's cool. Yeah, idea. So I guess, going back to the original question, do you feel like there's a part of that's the ending and beginning cycle that really like stands out to you in any significant way?
Yeah, so right, we were talking about the idea of completing something, the completion cycle of things, and or maybe the sense of accomplishment, And yeah, I mean, just like what Ryan was saying, when you are doing something athletic, like even on a micro scale, if you show up to the gym, you start a workout, and then when you finish the workout an hour later or whatever, there's a sense of accomplishment. Or I think for me, I feel a big sense of accomplishment when I've finished an athletic event, like running a Tough Mudder or a Spartan or something. You've trained for this for a few months. You run across the finish line. Yeah, I finished it. Like, that feels really good.
Gatorade on you.
Just you open the champagne bottle, Gatorade. Spray it all over you, and instead of champagne, it was really Gatorade. But I think
now I'm all sticky.
Ew, yeah. I think I feel that sense of accomplishment a lot when I've been reading books, for sure. It's really exciting to start a new book, and then you get to chapter like 3, and it's like, now it's a grind. And then you get to the last like 2 or 3 chapters of the book, and it's like, I'm almost done. And there's like a little adrenaline rush of like, if I sit down just a little bit longer and keep reading, like I'll finish this, and I can be totally done with this book. And it's like, I almost don't even care what the ending is. I just want to like keep listening to that, or keep reading or listening or whatever, just so I can like get through it,
And you're already thinking of the next book. Like, if only I was reading this book. This book is really exciting.
Exactly. I'm already like hyped on the next thing,
Yeah.
That's
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I felt that with that kind of stuff.
Do you think that's something that generally helps you or hinders you more?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because like, I could see how in one sense it's easy to chase the excitement of something new. And I almost wonder if the excitement of something new makes the middle feel extra boring,
I think there's a sense in like which if you are responsible about your process of something, it's like you could recognize that and still grind through. and then then you can use that excitement for the next thing as an advantage, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think biologically it makes sense that we have this cyclical motivation, but if we didn't have that cycle at all, we just had an even level of motivation, we wouldn't be able to push through difficult projects or slow down when things have been accomplished in rest. And I mean, sometimes maybe that cycle fights against us, but I think it creates opportunity for us to make more of the circumstances than we would have otherwise.
I like that perspective, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's funny, I'm just going to turn back to the board game analogy. I think of most of the time when you have something that's cyclical in a board game or something that has peaks and valleys to it, it creates opportunity to play with the peak or against the peak, depending on what you're trying to do strategically. And so I think if there wasn't that mechanic in the board game, you wouldn't have that opportunity. And in the same way, if we didn't have this motivation as humans that comes from the excitement of either completing something that's engaging us or starting something that's novel to us, I think that our lives would lack a lot of the variety that they have today.
Yeah. Here's the question. Do you guys feel like that kind of cycle? So like for me, I guess the cycle is more like the finishing it out as a grind. I'm like happy to get it done because I'm already like looking towards the next thing. Ryan, you kind of mentioned like you really like the accomplishment at the end of something. Do you think maybe personality plays a role in like the motivation through those cycles? Like maybe there's somebody that like really hates starting something, but they love like the last 25% or 30% of something, and then it just like that's where they get their fulfillment. Or maybe there's people that really like the middle and like they just like to be in the flow and they don't really want to worry about starting or finishing. They just like the busy work or whatever. Do you think that's a personality thing?
I think of different contexts drawing this out in one way more than another. For instance, I think in a lot of the tech work that I've seen, it's always jumping to the newest and most shiny thing, right? The newest product, the newest framework, whatever those things are. But then if you look towards, I think something more like gardening, the last 30% is way more exciting than the first because you then get to enjoy the fruit of your effort. And that's the most direct analogy, right? Literally the fruit of what you've grown. The planting part, the plowing part, that stuff, maybe not so exciting. But then getting to enjoy the food that's made from it is the joy of the whole moment. And so I think sometimes the excitement is in beginning a new process. Sometimes the excitement is the completion of the process, and I think that's going to depend on the context. Now, who you are and how you respond to those things may be different, right? That's why we have different vocations and people organizing themselves differently in society because, you get more joy out of the process of doing one thing versus another.
Yeah.
Interesting. That also kind of makes me think, I mean, you were using the analogy of growing things into the ground, gardening. The end has a lot of rewards, especially when it's like a food, right? I'm thinking of a different example where you're buying a house. And I just think of this because my wife and I were talking about real estate earlier today. And it's like, I think that when you move into a new place, especially if you owned that place, I feel like the initial move into that place would be really fun and exciting. And then it like slowly depreciates over time. And I would even imagine that when you leave, maybe you would have a sense of like excitement moving on to a new place. But I can think of a lot of times when I've moved out of a certain place where I lived in for a long time and felt sad and like, oh man, like I have memories at this location and I kind of am going to miss being at this place. And there's a new change. And it's like the beginning was super great. And then it just feels like it almost like loses value. You kind of don't care as much. And then it's almost like you're almost like bummed. You're like at a low point when you finally end, just in terms of like reversing the axis. But I don't know if you guys feel the same way about that.
No, I just hope my place will just like burn down so I can move to the next one. Get some insurance money. But that's just, I got a restless
Careful,
spirit.
man. Your mom might be listening.
Yeah. Well, bring some matches. No, I don't know. That's probably just part of my restless spirit. You know, I was hoping like life kicks me into a new area or something.
Yeah.
So.
I think I'm realizing in what we've been discussing, there's kind of the events themselves, and then there's our response to the events. And I think what you're getting at, Paul, is more the what is my response to what's going on, rather than something like growing or starting a new project specifically. It is for you, there is the satisfaction of it, maybe a job well done or something that you don't have to think about anymore. And that's kind of what you're talking about as a source of inspiration right now.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, and just kind of, it's almost like a relief to get something done. And it's not like taxing either. It's like I don't have to devote any mental space to it anymore, which I like.
Yeah.
But then I take on 5 new things, so I don't know what I'm doing. It's a weird paradox that I can't get rid of, but I also still like it, so joke's on me. All right, Ryan. You've had 40 minutes of inspiration pouring into your ears.
That's right.
I feel inspired.
Yeah.
I feel so inspired. In fact, I have 2 different topics that I might want to discuss with you.
Oh, wow.
But all of that to
let's
say,
vote on them.
When Brandon was discussing board games, I was thinking about how most recently the board game that I was inspired to create a board game. And the source of that inspiration was actually a dream that I had.
Whoa.
Maybe I played too many board games, but when I dream about a board game, then I wake up and go, oh, that doesn't exist. That'd be really fun to make. And all of that to say, we could talk about dreams as a source of inspiration.
Ooh.
I would say that there are multiple things in my life that came to me as the result of a dream, whether it's something as simple as a board game to something as big as an understanding about life and how I operate that I didn't have before.
How can you say no to that? Yeah, I'd be down to talk about that.
I vote for that one. I don't care what the other one was.
The other discussion that I'd be interested in going into is just the nature of inspiration from creativity and talking about how inspiration, I would say, is kind of the opposite of comparison. When you're looking at someone, you feel down about something else, where you're getting down on, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not good enough to do this. And inspiration is kind of the opposite, where we look at the same facts and the same experiences and then say, I want to become like that, or that then gives me a reason to improve myself.
Yeah, do both. You got 10 minutes.
You just gave us like an impossible choice here. I feel like those are 2 amazing things to unpack.
Dreams, the most potent thing that I ever learned from dreams is how I want to foster joy in my life. And it came from a very vivid dream that has a lot of very specific elements that were particular to my own personal circumstances at the time. But it was this very visceral acknowledgement of where I let in room for doubt, it poisons joy. And when I say doubt, it's like doubt of myself. And that's not allowing room for myself to be wrong. No, that's just humility. It's when I am taking intentional action to tear myself down, really. That when I allowed the space for not just healthy consideration, but where I'm actually trying to, through one weird set of finding satisfaction or finding a reason to beat myself up, that when I allow that to persist, it poisons my joy. It keeps me from being able to approach others with a whole heart. And that only when I have a perspective that says, I'm doing my best, or even if I'm not doing my best in this thing, it's because I'm prioritizing something else. And I am constantly maximizing the equation of how do I serve myself and serve others and serve God. And I don't want to be working against myself in challenging and creating opportunity for self-deprecating or self-depreciating that doesn't serve the kingdom of God, that doesn't serve my life, and it doesn't serve the people close to me.
Wait, so is this something that you got in a dream?
Yeah.
That's like an essay. Like when I dream, it's like a weird narrative. Like I'm running through a forest and a zombie was chasing me. Yeah, I'm floating on the ceiling.
I mean, that was a once in a lifetime kind of thing. I've never experienced anything like that.
Your dream was just Jordan Peterson giving you a lecture.
It was a wild dream, and yes, it was a very profound conclusion to that dream. And most of my dreams don't have that kind of significance, but I can still look back and remember the details of that dream, and the message that I woke up with was significant.
That's really cool. That's cool. That's a very, I mean, as I was making note earlier, a different type of like dream state, which is interesting. But I'm kind of curious, because it's such a profound thought of a dream, do you feel like that's, coincidence to have that kind of dream? It's a divine message of a dream. It's something that was already like in your mind earlier, and then you somehow were able to unpack it. Like, what's the source of a thought like that to come into your mind at night?
It was something that I was wrestling through in that season, right? There was circumstances in my life that were very pertinent to this conclusion, where I couldn't understand whether or not an appropriate level of, or what an appropriate level of self-criticism was. I had a constant battle with my own mind of tearing myself down and thinking that somehow would make me a better person, or somehow make me more spiritually accomplished. It was really a misunderstanding regarding what it meant to be wholehearted. And maybe not even recognizing that as a goal. That today I want to say that my the way I see myself isn't conflicted about who I am or who I want to be. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It doesn't mean that I do not fail or I don't sin, have problems with who I am. But it means that berating myself is not a way to get myself to achieve more of what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think that it's oh, hold on. Wait, we lost Paul for a second. Let's see if we can bring him back online. What happened to him? Oh, okay. Cool. He's going to try to jump out and jump back in. All right. Editing. That's what editing's for. Or maybe not. We'll figure it out. Yeah, well, let's press pause until he comes back so that I'm not sharing a thought without him. And, there he is.
Welcome back.
He has returned. Ryan was just saying that the inspiration to all of his dreams really came from me. No, he didn't say that. You ready to go again, or?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Cool.
I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, I know you disappeared for a second. That's okay.
So to wrap up the thought that I had, I don't know how much Paul caught, but
I was up to the point where you were kind of explaining how it manifests itself in the dream.
Okay. And just the conclusion that I do not want to berate myself or belittle myself in a means to try and perform. That instead, I only want to encourage myself, to motivate myself out of a desire to be better, but not through a way that harms me or that belittles my lack of accomplishment so far.
Now, that was, one profound dream that you've had. that do you feel like that was the specific dream that has inspired you, or do you have like multiple dreams that have been really inspiring to you? Like, is
I've
this
had one or two others that aren't quite as significant as that.
okay?
Actually, every significant breakup that I've had a meaningful dream the next night,
Oh wow.
which is
Need to date
wild.
more. It'll change your life.
My breakups always cause me to have really meaningless songs that suddenly appear in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I have had pretty intricate dreams, maybe just processing those emotional events. They don't always come away with such a significant, realization, but I think it is part of that emotional shifting for me. A lot of these dreams that have been meaningful have come from times of emotional significance.
That's interesting. It almost sounds like the dream state for you is this like unconscious processing of what's been happening in your life, which is fascinating. It's like, oh, sit down with my dream psychotherapist right now, and
That's the ones I'm telling you about.
That's like get some work done while you're asleep.
The rest of them are just, dancing in a purple jumpsuit in a jungle, and then you're like, what was that?
That sounds good
in here. Mm-hmm. You see, the color purple represents
your latent sexual urges for
your
one of your parental figures.
Spaghetti.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, cool, man. So so some dreams. That's really cool. And then
Have you guys found any sort of inspiration from dreams? I know most of them might be just jumbles of nonsense. But maybe a song. I think of many composers that I've heard where it's, they said, oh, this melody came to me in a dream and I had to write it down. Something like that.
Didn't Nikola Tesla or something do that too with his inventions? I feel like, or maybe it was Edison or something.
Right.
I don't even really remember my dreams. I wake up and I feel like within 30 seconds they're gone, and it's like that I don't even remember what it was. I don't know, disappears.
Like nightmares that are very poignant, but not in any I don't know if it's in a meaningful way or not. But,
I don't do this regularly, but I know that people talk about practicing remembering dreams, that the more you take action right as you wake up with a dream to write it down, the better you'll get at recalling those dreams typically.
Yeah, I think that's one of the steps in trying to lucid dream as well. If you don't already do it.
I've not done that before, but I do know that there's kind of a hit or miss for me where there are some dreams like these that I'm talking to you about that are almost burned in my memory, that I can recall a significant amount of the detail. And then there are others that, I have plenty of dreams, way more than that kind of dream where I just don't remember anything, kind of like you're describing, Brandon.
Yeah. I wonder if it could be something like when I hear you describe your dream, it's almost like it reminds me of memories where you can have this, memories are not necessarily what actually happened, but usually some sort of large emotional moment in a life. And so when you actually go back and remember that, you kind of at least with memories, you put there's almost a filter you read into this thing based off the emotion. So you're almost making up the story every time you go back and remember it. In a sense.
That's exactly right.
And so that sounds almost like that dream state to me, where it's you don't remember exactly what it was, but you find the meaning in that strong emotional thing. So if the dream is a very strong emotion, or something being broken down or processed or coming back up, it's you can kind of go back into that, and it's there's not a lot of maybe rationale in the dream, but there's a lot of emotion, and so you can kind of go back and then extract out some meaning and reason from that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I can recall a dream, one of the ones connected to a breakup, where my ex was in my family home, and there was a break-in at the same time, and my ex had never been to that family home, and there was never any legitimate threat at my house. We never had someone rob the place, but whatever the emotional context that was being processed there contained this element of my family home probably being a source of security or comfort for me. The processing of whatever had just happened emotionally between my ex and I, and then some sense of impending loss, all colliding into one.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think when I have had dreams that like I can remember, I'm pretty sure that my dreams are almost always some narrative story situation. Sometimes with people I know, sometimes with people like I don't know at all. It's like, there's a new character, somebody. And I would say most of the time it's nonsensical. It's like I don't understand what's going on. But every once in a while, I've had dreams where I don't remember exactly what was happening, but it felt like it was like the continuation of a story. It felt like this is dream story part 1, dream story part 2. It's like, am I going back to the same like universe, like fictional narrative of my dream state here or something?
Oh
it's
no,
like,
I'm trapped in the DCEU. It's hell. Keep going back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Somebody kill me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a weird thing, but I think that's the only really like interesting, weird dream thing that I've ever had. That seemed really out of the ordinary. Otherwise, it's all just Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. All right, what was your other one, Ryan? You said you were delving into the nature of inspiration and creativity itself.
Oh, this stemmed from reading Brené Brown and her work on vulnerability and wholeheartedness. And the conversation was circling around a chapter she wrote that was creativity and comparison. And she identifies that creativity, in her opinion, is antithetical to comparison. That when we compare ourselves to others, we are going to be inhibiting and stopping up our creative process, because creativity flows from a genuine expression of ourselves, and comparison is going to be tearing ourselves down because we're not what we would want to be. And I disagree with her. I think it was a good place to jump off from, but it feels incomplete. I think if you were to discuss those as a single continuum, you're going to encounter circumstances that don't fit that well. And I would want to add another axis to evaluate this on. And that axis to me was what I've discussed with Brandon before, a notion of negative or positive interpretation of real events. Do we have a perspective that is inviting thriving and emotional wholeheartedness, or we have a perspective that is emotionally limited and seeing the world through a survival mechanism? Everything is chipping away at my ability to get ahead, or everything is helping me or giving me challenge to grow stronger and to exceed in life.
Is that what people kind of refer to when they say like the abundance mindset or the scarcity mindset?
That's exactly it. Thank you. That was actually what I was struggling to recall. So yes, it's an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. And I would say that her perspective does not account for when I look at someone else who does beautiful work and it inspires me to create something myself, to enjoy more of their work, right? When I read a brilliant fantasy book, I don't leave going, wow, I'll never write a book like that. I leave going, wow, what an amazing world. Like, I want to participate in a world like that. I want to, have an experience that resembles that. Whatever those things are, I leave inspired. It is not a negative thing to compare myself to the writer and be like, wow, he's so accomplished with his life. It's like, oh, how did he envision this kind of world, and how do I put myself in the place to do something like that? Where can I learn to create worlds like this, or where can I find other worlds like this to enjoy? And all of that to say, when it comes to inspiration, I would say that is the antithesis or the opposite of comparison. when we talk about abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah. I am curious. So when you're saying like so that's like a cool like mode of inspiration is like instead of you're seeing their work, you want to go out and emulate it or do your own version of it essentially. Kind of what I was thinking is like, is there moments where like, because obviously some people would compare and feel bad about themselves, like they can't make that or whatever. Is that like a factor of like how you're doing in life or where you're at in life? And then like, so if you're doing worse, it's like, oh, those comparisons come in easier and like the being down on yourself. Or is it maybe even like a consequence of the work you're reading? It's like maybe someone's work is like very technically great, but it's like hollow in some way. And so it leaves you like with only like the comparison to maybe them or their achievements. Whereas like someone maybe like that's really deeply profound, it like actually sparks something different in you and almost like negates comparison just because the work is so original or so, profound in some way. And I'd like to hear Brandon's thought too.
Well,
both of your thoughts, but yeah.
Yeah, Ryan, go ahead since you were starting.
I think what Paul's getting to is so much of how do we respond to the stimulus in our life, the circumstances, and everything from how much sleep we've had to our convictions, our beliefs, our perspectives on life will all inform that response. And to me, I don't know how to assess where one person is on that continuum at any given point, but I believe that I want to practice moving further along that continuum. And I was just reading a quote that said, don't evaluate your life when you're tired. And it's so true. Yeah, that's another good one. Because something as simple as that can greatly color how I think of myself. And that when I'm tired, I'm like, oh, I'm not moving forward in my life. Like I haven't, I need to do more of this. I find that those scarcity thoughts, that kind of mentality creeps in a lot more easily because it's just I feel badly. And therefore I find reasons to justify how I feel instead of looking at myself with grace and saying, hey, you had a rough night. Maybe that's informing your perspective on life right now. But go ahead, Paul.
No, yeah.
All right, my turn. Well, okay, so what came to mind in the idea of if you are doing something, comparing yourself to another person or group of people doing something, and then you feel bad about it, I feel like that only occurs for me when I have a pre-existing experience with doing that thing, or if I have a certain level of maybe like a certain level of status within that thing, like a little bit of pride or ego going into that thing.
So like in the game.
Yeah, if I've already got some skin in the game, if somebody's really good at something, writing a novel or whatever it is, somebody's really good at having their lamps work well. And let's say somebody's really good at something, and then I try my hand at it and try to pick it up. I feel like, well, I'm new at this. I'm not expected to be as great as this person. I'm just doing this for the fun of doing it, for the fun of doing something new. Versus if I take like my business that I have, and then I do like a Google search of comparative businesses by all my competitors online. Oh, this person has more Google reviews than me. What could I do to get more Google reviews? I need to copy everything they're doing, but do it better. And then I like get really insecure and I feel like I suck at life, That's because I'm already having skin in the game, putting myself out there as somebody who is like an expert at somebody who knows what they're doing into something.
Probably
and then to see somebody do it better makes me feel bad about myself. Versus if it's something brand new, it feels like there's no stakes, and there's nothing to like fear in trying something. There's only a positive. It feels like there's only inspiration. So I don't know. I think in my life, the inspiring idea that you're talking about, Ryan, particularly comes when it's something I've never considered doing before. Then the new thing becomes really inspiring to me. I don't know if that resonates with you guys or not. Oh, there's my light again.
Yeah. I think so.
I'm trying to put this to the test in other circumstances, right? When you think about, when you learn about a historical figure who did incredible things by the time they were 30, and you're like, oh, I'm past that point. Am I making the right choices with my life? Or is it like, wow, how do I, live a life that's that meaningful as well?
Yeah. And you get to next week's episode. What is the meaning of life? We'll answer all your questions.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. It is very much a response in how you choose to respond to a stimulus of somebody's accomplishment. If somebody has done something really, really great, do you look at that through the lens of your own deficiency in your identity, or does it inspire you to see they're capable of doing that, so I'm capable of doing that too? It is very much your own attitude of how you choose to view something, which is interesting.
Maybe I find Michael Phelps inspiring. Doesn't mean I'm ever going to be that level of swimmer, right? Like, it still might be like, ooh, I should swim a bit more. Like, use that side of my life and pursue that, because I haven't gotten in the water in a while.
Maybe that's why like that example is more inspiring and less comparative, because it's like you don't have as much skin because you're not going to be a professional swimmer. But if you see maybe like a programmer who lives like next door to you, it's like that could be me, whatever, or somebody that's like,
I think also those underdog stories, or the rags to riches, it's like whenever somebody was in a place where they were fully disadvantaged and overcame all the obstacles and then they achieved something great. I think that's also inspiring, just from the self perspective of like, oh, well, if they were able to do that at such a disadvantage, I could do that with a disadvantage too, and that's another like self-perceiving example.
It's hard though, because it's like somewhat falls into survivorship bias, where it's like you only see the people, the 0.0001% of people.
You don't get those rags to rags stories.
There's much more of those.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
So you kind of
So maybe that's like false hope.
Well, and this is where, how do we derive a sense of like grounded hope, right? Not hope that is so pie in the sky that like, oh, I hope I win the lottery. It's like, no, I aspire to accomplish this, and I'm going to take meaningful steps toward it. That doesn't mean that I necessarily will get there in my lifetime. I don't necessarily have to put that on me as you must accomplish this by the time you're 35. But instead to say, I'm holding this with an open hand. It doesn't have to be this way, but I am stepping toward it as something that I want to accomplish.
Yeah. Not being like, I think then you're open to other, opportunities that might come your way, or leaving yourself open to other inspiration as well. So I think that's cool. All right, should we wrap it up there?
Should we wrap?
Fun to discuss these topics with you guys.
Yeah.
I am inspired. Might start my own podcast now. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man.
Dude. Yeah, one step at a time. First off,
my podcast is going to be directly competing. Why inspiration sucks.
You have to get a mic to see your pretty face first, and then from there, then you can start competing. I'm
just going to use one of those AI generated faces.
Oh, you should, yeah.
Oh my gosh, you should just deep fake our faces over you.
Yeah, there you go. That would be pretty cool. I know a lot of people do that with YouTube videos and stuff, so yeah. Not too hard anymore.
That's pretty funny. Well, dreams, inspiration,
board games,
completion, accomplishment stuff, board games. There you go, people. From our brilliantly inspired minds to yours, to your earlobes.
May you be inspired to do something else with your life as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Now may be inspired to turn this podcast off.
Yeah, right.
Go watch something else. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.